For more, we're joined here on set by our Europe editor-in-chief, Maria Tadeo, who's been covering G7 meetings for years. Good morning, Maria. So what did you make of yesterday's talks?
Yes, well, Maeve, look, we can talk about the G7, whether it's relevant or not relevant, whether now it's the G6 without the United States. Can you look at the global economy without India and China? Of course, those are very valid debates. But when the G7 meets, especially in the context of a crisis, that is important. And it also sends a signal to the world that they will take action together. And yesterday in that meeting, which was hosted by France with the rotating presidency, the G7 agreed, quote, and hopefully we can put it up on the board, that they will take all the necessary actions to intervene in this energy market to preserve the stability and the security of a very volatile energy global market. Now, at this point, we've seen that oil prices, Brent crude yesterday touching $150 a barrel. We've now had practically 4 weeks of oil hovering around $100 a barrel. Obviously, that has enormous implications for the global economy. The G7 reiterated yesterday that they will take and are ready to take measures. They will do so in a coordinated manner. And they also urged the countries around the world should not restrict oil exports. Now, all of that is a strong message, you could argue. The issue coming out of that meeting is that there were no specific actions and there were no concrete measures that were announced. So in a way, it was yes, all words and no actions. Remember, just a few weeks ago, the International Energy Agency agreed to release a massive strategic reserve of oil. 400 million barrels enter the global economy. That was not the case yesterday. There was no indication that will happen anytime soon before the reassurance with, yes, we'll take actions, but it's unclear what they will look like. And then, of course, Maeve, there's a big question around the focus point of this crisis, which is the Strait of Hormuz, which remains shut. 20% of the global oil transits through that waterway. It's unclear whether it will reopen. And to that extent, there's also a big question now in terms of the military operation. Is this weeks or will it be months? And then this overall theme, which is the U.S. preparing for a ground invasion of Iran, certainly when it comes to Karg Island, which of course homes the oil terminals of Iran. So a lot of that means uncertainty, volatility that feeds inevitably into the market and prices.
And a lot of nervousness, of course, in this town, and the EU contemplating their own measures too.
Well, yes. And look, when you look at the EU, there's two ways this can go. You can look at the national measures, which usually means a government will say, look, at this point, I got to cut VAT, taxes on electricity bills, on energy bills for households. They could also put in forward subsidies. That the same could apply for industries. The issue with the EU is that not every country has the same capacity. They do not have the same fiscal room to put forward measures. The other point which is relevant, however, is the EU measures. We know that they've looked at things like a windfall tax. They've also looked at things that could look at, buy-in in common, bulk buy-in, but also very relevant. Yesterday, the Commission, in a letter which we have here, is now urging member states, and this is very relevant, to also put in place demand-saving measures. This means, of course, that you try to tackle this issue through the demand, the use of energy. That could also mean, look, in this Easter break, don't get on a plane, maybe drive less, and some interesting numbers also coming in with the EU now estimating that the bill, just the bill in additional cost of fossil fuels, is 13 billion euros. So obviously that leads to a big question about stagflation, lower growth and more inflation.
Indeed, Maria Tadeo, thank you so much for all those details. And of course, you can read more about all that on our website, Euronews.com.